Most people think Wall Street secrets are buried in complex algorithms. But what if the truth was hidden in plain sight, discovered by the least expected person? Hey Soul Stories fam, we've got a sweet and totally swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in. The baggage claim hall buzzed like a never-ending shareholders meeting. Except here, people were pushing carts instead of responsibilities. The carousel turned steadily, spilling out a river of black, navy, and gray suitcases so identical that without labels, even the owners would need the universe to intervene. Maya Collins stood by column 12, holding a cup of coffee that had gone more than half cold, eyes flicking between the carousel and the unfinished project list on her phone. She had just wrapped up 3 days of interior surveys for a boutique hotel. Lots of oak, plenty of natural light, and countless promises from investors that they would get back soon. A deep blue suitcase with a minimalist design rolled to a stop right in front of her. A brown leather ribbon tied to the handle, exactly the kind of subtle marker she always chose. Just enough of an accent, not flashy. Maya reached down and lifted it with the practiced ease of someone long accustomed to solo flights across time zones. She glanced at the name tag. The plastic sleeve was smudged with flight dust. The print half faded. Collins, or was it Coleman? In that moment, with the loudspeaker blaring over the clatter of cartwheels, Maya trusted her eyesight. Or maybe she simply wanted to be home already with her beloved sofa and her sun-warmed wool blanket. Pulling the suitcase clear of the crowd, she stopped by the drink counter to add ice cubes to her coffee. The cold mist rose, soothing the fatigue clinging to the back of her neck. Tonight's plan, she reminded herself, a hot shower, the Monday night piano playlist, and no email. At 32, she knew the small discipline she had to keep, or else life would dissolve into an endless to-do list. In the taxi home, she texted Zoe, her best friend, an unofficial major shareholder in all emotional decisions. Landed safe, don't call on a temporary ceasefire with humankind. Zoe replied instantly. Drama tomorrow. I've got hot news. The pool project client just changed his mind for the 4th time. Maya chuckled and tossed the phone back into her bag. The city drifted by outside, yellow street lights softening the rain-dampened road. She closed her eyes for 90 seconds, just enough to let her pulse unlench. At the same time, across the city, Adrian Cole stepped out of a sleek black sedan in front of a luxury hotel. A thin veil of clouds dulled the brass letters of the logo, giving everything the look of cold glass. Adrian was used to this kind of chill. He wore it like an invisible suit, polished, proper, and keeping others at a safe distance. The receptionist bowed, the elevator opened, and the mirror reflected a tall man, shoulders straight, tie knotted to the millimeter. The suite greeted him with dark wood and a faint orange blossom scent. Adrian placed the suitcase on the rack, unlocking it with the quick precision of ritual. He planned to pull out his laptop to review tomorrow's draft agreement. The time zone hadn't shifted yet, but his work habits never waited. The lock clicked, the lid lifted. No laptop, no thick gray folder clipped with heavy steel, no universal charger, no charcoal sweater. His assistant Edward always folded into the top compartment. Instead, a different world had quietly arrived as though at the wrong address. On top lay a beige fiber-bound sketchbook, the corners gently worn from travel. Beneath it, a box of pens in every tip size, a metal ruler, fabric swatches pinned together, and a small canvas pouch stamped with tools for building cozy chaos. In the corner, a pair of mustard-colored wool socks was neatly rolled and placed next to a bundle of glue-sleeve peppermint tea tied with twine. Adrian froze as if someone had turned on strange music in the middle of a board meeting. He picked up the sketchbook. The first page showed the floor plan of a living room with tall windows, arrows, and notes carefully marking the flow of light. Along the margin, a flourish of handwriting read, "Sofa long enough for one to lie down reading and one to rest their feet. Love needs square footage." He let out a faint scoff, whimsical but logical. The next page was a rendering of an open kitchen, a stone-topped island, slim-laid bar stools, a note, "A beautiful kitchen encourages cooking. A livening kitchen encourages staying." In the corner, an arrow pointed to a hanging lamp. "This light should be warmer than 700 Kelvin. No one wants dinner to look like surgery." Adrian caught himself pressing his lips together to stifle a laugh. Strange, it was like someone had cracked a window open in the middle of winter. He flipped again. The third page, a library, tall shelves, a broad window ledge. Note, "If there's no seat on the sill, don't call it a reading room." And at the bottom, smaller words, "Buy a giant pillow to cry into properly on bad days." This brand of sarcastic optimism fits perfectly with the disciplined technical lines. Hard, soft, rational, playful. He felt intrigued, a rare word in his emotional dictionary lately. A pack of sticky notes slipped out as he tilted the notebook. Yellow, green, coral, pink squares, each with short lines, part reminder, part joke. "Buy a rug that vacuums easily, clean faster, live longer. Plant goes here to hide ugly outlet. Hard truth, but prettier. Leave space for the no one ever sits here chair. There's always one." Adrian imagined the hand that wrote them, steady, quick, unafraid of leaving opinions behind. A personality sketched clearly than any business card. As he set the notes down, His fingers brushed something cool and round. In the corner pocket sat a small glass jar with a dull silver lid. A handwritten label slanted jasmine and honey. Just 2 words, no brand. No logo, no marketing, something deeply personal. Adrian lifted it. The weight in his palm made him handle it more carefully than his own belongings. An instinct he seldom had. He twisted the lid. The faint rasp of metal threads sounded almost like a whisper. A fragrance unfurled, not flooding the room, not claiming it, but seeping in like lamplight at dusk. Warm, gentle, honest. Jasmine first, fresh green like blossoms still holding morning dew. Then honey, not syrupy, not candy, but soft, mellow in the edges of jasmine. And in the distance he thought he sensed dry wood, the pages of a wealth book. Or maybe the open sketchbook tricked his senses. He stood still, letting the scent brush his skin like a stranger's hand grazing his shoulder. Lately, Adrienne's world had been the smell of new plastics from devices, leather from auditorium seats, lacquered boardroom tables, the industrial scent of central air. Sterile, harmless, soulless. But now with jasmine and honey, a door opened without a handle. Late summer afternoon, window cracked, slow breeze, paper rustling, half-cut oranges on the table. The feeling of home, no address, no map, just a safe lodging inside one's chest, suddenly returned. He almost laughed at himself. What did neuroscience call this? He wondered. Guldatory emotional linkage. He vaguely recalled an article that mentioned sent shortcuts into the lay system. But that was about other people. And yet here he was, a man who had confidently locked away all corridors to the unnecessary, standing still, holding a stranger's perfume, letting it pick the lock as if the key had always been there. His phone buzzed. An email from Edward, updated meeting schedule, a memo to sign before 9 o'clock a.m. Adrian set the jar back, ready to zip the suitcase. His hand paused on the fabric cover, eyes caught again by those small, frank notes. He let out a soundless laugh when he found another slip tucked inside. Note to future self: if tomorrow you wake up tired, brew tea. If tea isn't enough, open a window. If still not enough, buy a plane ticket. Clearly, the writer wasn't one to wait for permission to make life gentler. He sat beside the suitcase, leaning back against the bed frame, listening to the steady hum of the air conditioner. 1 second, 2, 3. The small jar rested in the corner, like catching the liquid inside. Clear as diluted honey. He closed his eyes, repeating the 2 words on the label, jasmine and honey, and felt his chest ease like after a rare deep breath. The electric kettle clicked red to green. But Adrian didn't get up to pour tea as usual. He remained there, palm absently stroking the coarse fabric cover, tracing the weave. The strict cold script of his life had suddenly been footnoted by someone else's handwriting. Unsanctioned but not unwelcome, he opened his eyes, scanning the flawless room. Flawless in a way that now felt cramped before turning back to the foreign suitcase. Just before standing, he reached for the jar again and opened it once more. Just a short inhale to test if the feeling had a chance. It hadn't. The scent made him feel something he hadn't in years. Warmth. Morning in Brooklyn opened with a strip of sunlight slipping through the blinds, landing squarely on the little cactus pot on the windowsill. Maya had named it August because it survived as stubbornly as New York summers. At 8, she stirred a pot of oatmeal, sprinkled roasted almonds on top, then stood back as if she had just finished a piece of modern art. On the kitchen table sat a steaming cup of peppermint tea, and next to it the deep blue suitcase from last night. Silent, unmoving, like a guest unwilling to reveal its name, her phone buzzed. A known number. Maya glanced at August. What do you think, spam or destiny? She swiped to answer, put it on speaker, and one hand still stirring to keep the oats from sticking. Good morning, Miss Collins. A calm, polite male voice, exactly the kind used to open slide-heavy meetings. This is Edward, assistant to Mr. Adrian Cole. Last night, wait. Maya cut in, turning down the stove. Edward who? Edward Scissorhands or Edward the spreadsheet master? A measurable pause. I'm Edward Miles, executive assistant to Mr. Adrian Cole, CEO of Hale Company. Last night there was a baggage mix-up at JFK. We believe you are currently in possession of Mr. Cole's suitcase. Maya eyed the suitcase resting innocently on the wooden floor. Her instincts nudged her to pull out a chair and sit. Oh, the Edward. Hi there. But tell me, is this a new scam? Pretend to be EO's assistant? Lure strangers to a meeting point and steal their kidneys? I can send a confirmation email from the corporate address right now. Edward replied, not rattled in the least, his tone the kind of calm born from years of odd questions. Or you may call Hale and Company's main line and ask to be transferred to my extension. Or Mia took a sip of tea. You described to me a few items inside your boss's missing suitcase. The more unique the better. Another pause. I haven't seen the contents of the suitcase, ma'am, but I do have Mr. Cole's standard travel inventory. A laptop, a file folder, 3 shirts, 2 suits, 1. That's enough. Thank you, Edward. That list could be copied and pasted from Wikipedia. Officeman's starter pack. I'll check. She looked at the suitcase, then at the oatmeal. Then back at the suitcase. Give me 5 minutes. If I find a world domination plan in here, I'll call you back. If I don't, that means I'm busy reporting this scam to the police. I understand. Edward's tone didn't waver. This is my direct number showing on your screen. Thank you for your cooperation. The call ended. Maya set the phone down and pulled the suitcase closer. Her fingers lingered on the zipper, a moment suddenly solemn, like opening a parcel from outer space. She pulled, zip, no duck pajamas, no beige sketchbook, no tea pouches. Instead, a world of crisp lines and polished surfaces, shirts folded with military precision, 2 charcoal suits without a stray thread, a watchbox nestled in black foam like a satellite, and while hello there, a file folder stamped with the Hale Company logo. Oh my God, she exhaled a sound half defeat, half admiration. Congratulations, Maya, you now temporarily own the property of a man who worships at the Pandon altar of Greater Grayer. She flipped open the folder. Company name, clauses, fine print as dense as the forehead wrinkles of chronic insomnias. The phone buzzed again, another unknown number, same prefix. Maya waited for a beat before answering. Yes, this time not Edward, a voice deeper, lower, cold enough to cool the steam in her kitchen. This is Adrian Cole. Maya blinked. The name sat right there on the folder in front of her. She looked at the suitcase. Then in August, you could be anyone borrowing the name off this folder, she said, sliding the suitcase slightly farther away as if it might be eavesdropping. I need my suitcase back today. His words were clipped without echo. Inside it you'll find, hold up, Mr. Cole. If you are Mr. Cole, Maya propped her elbow on the table. Let's do multi-factor authentication. I'll describe one thing in the suitcase I'm holding. You describe one thing in the suitcase you're holding. If it matches, I believe you. Fair. 3 seconds of silence. Fair. Maya scanned the lineup of shirts like obedient soldiers. She picked up the watch box. This suitcase has a watch in a black case, face like a moon without air, and it looks so expensive. I feel 10 years poorer just looking at it. Oh, and a charcoal suit on the left. Brand I refuse to read. Too much risk of cardiac arrest. The man gave a short exhale as if suppressing a laugh. Accurate. Now your turn. A beige fabric sketchbook, corners worn. Inside a living room floor plan with a margin note. Sofa long enough for one person to read lying down and another to put their feet up. Love needs square footage. His voice paused half a beat as if choosing carefully, then continued. A canvas pouch that says tools for building cozy chaos, a pair of mustard wool socks, and a small glass jar labeled jasmine and honey. Maya bit her lip. Her heart skipped, not from romance. Well, maybe 10.0% from romance, but from surprise. Okay, you win. Or you're a master hacker who somehow broke into the diary of my life. She burst out laughing, her laughter bouncing off the kitchen ceiling like bright dust motes. Honestly, I thought you'd be the kind of guy who used the suitcase as bait to lure me out and sell me to a kidney harvesting gang. On the other end, a rare meteorological event occurred. Ice cracked. Tiny, quick, but real. Adrian, the man who had long considered laughter something to be left outside the office, actually chuckled as though someone had plucked a long, silent string. I don't trade in organs, he said, his voice softened by 1 Kelvin. And your suitcase is not effective bait. It distracts me. Oh. Maya rested her chin in her hand. Because of the mustard socks. Because of the notes, he admitted in honesty strangely I know. And the scent. The oatmeal on the stove gave a warning bubble. Maya turned it off. Poured it into a bowl and sprinkled cinnamon. All right, Mr. Cole. Authentication complete. I officially confess. I grabbed the wrong suitcase at Carousel 12. I don't know how. Maybe the carousel knew I like navy blue. I grabbed the wrong one too, he said. They looked uncannily alike. Same brand, same shade, same ribbon on the handle. Maya sedate. Aesthetic catastrophe. Across the city, Adrian glanced at the suitcase open on the chair, the jar of jasmine and honey glowing quietly in the corner like a secret lighting the room. He didn't say that, but the thought of it lingering on the wrist of the woman on the line, warm, soft, staying just long enough, slowed his next words. Thank you for taking this call. I only picked up because Edward talks like a bank hotline. While you, Maya, tilted her head, half teasing, half serious, you talk like a man who doesn't have time for nonsense. That made me believe you. I don't. He confirmed without pride, without apology, which is why I want this resolved quickly. Could you open the top zip compartment of the suitcase you're holding? Inside there should be a file folder. I need to confirm it's there. Hang on. Maya unzipped. A thick binder steel clipped labeled Proposed Partnership. Hale and Company X Orion. She tapped the edge, hearing the sound of dry paper. Still here. Nobody ate it. Good. Adrian nodded though she couldn't see. Thank you. Maya spooned oatmeal, thinking fast. I could drop the suitcase at Lost and Found and let them contact you. I tried that channel last night, he said. It could take 48 hours. I need the document sooner, so what do you suggest other than meeting me in an empty lot at midnight? Maya arched an eyebrow, deliberately serious, for 2 seconds before laughing and breaking the ice herself. The lobby of the Hale Regent Hotel, 11 o'clock a.m. Today, Adrian replied, his organizer's nature unfolding like a city map. Edward will meet you in the lobby with security and reception. If you're uncomfortable, we can switch to the cafe across the street. It's crowded there. Maya tapped her spoon against the bowl, the clang reminding her. Live lightly. I'll pick the cafe. Crowds mean lower kidney theft risk. She paused. But hey, if you're planning to ransom the suitcase with coffee, I like Americanos, no sugar, noted, Adrienne answered, and in the space between those two clipped syllables, flickered another smile, small as an elevator light, but enough to light a face. Before we hang up, Mia said, tone slipping into unexpected sincerity. Thank you for calling yourself. Most people would have let their assistant handle it. I'll bring the suitcase to you tomorrow. I wanted to speak directly, he said. A simple truth, no decoration. A brief silence, not uncomfortable, but like a rest between two notes. Maya pulled the suitcase closer again, studied the perfect stitching, the polished buttons. Belongings of another man, another world. She felt amused and curious. All right, she said. Sullivan's Row. I'll bring yours, you bring mine. Understood. Adrienne's voice was precise, but the final words grazed the soft edge of the conversation. Thank you, Miss Collins. Call me Maya, she corrected lightly. Easier. Maya, he repeated. In his deep voice, the name somehow sounded warmer. The call ended. Maya set the phone down and took a deep inhale. She turned back to her oatmeal, now cold, took a spoonful, and laughed to herself. Hacker 0. Maya 1, she muttered, pulling the suitcase closer, draping a soft cloth over it like a guest in temporary lodging. In the kitchen corner, August stood still, a silent witness as a new chapter unfolded over half a bowl of oatmeal. A few miles away, Adrian ended the call. He looked at the foreign suitcase, faintly perfumed with jasmine and honey, like a whispered greeting. His morning schedule, normally packed to the brim, now carried a subtle gap. At 11:00, he checked his inbox. 12 new emails, 2 missed calls from Tokyo. He replied to one, delegated another, and left the rest to others. His hand drifted to the glass jar and opened the lid gently. The scent spread, not imposing, just present, enough for him to feel one simple thing. Warmth could arrive in the most ordinary ways. He closed it, set it back, adjusted his cuff, and stepped into his morning for the first time in a long while with a small smile that only someone standing very close might notice. That noon, the lobby of the Hale Regent Hotel was as crowded as if all of Manhattan had scheduled their meetups in the same place. Suitcases rolled noisily across the marble floors, the click of high heels mingling with polite laughter. In the far left corner, the small cafe counter steamed with espresso, where Maya Collins leaned back in her chair, Adrienne's suitcase sitting loyally beside her like a well-behaved pet. She had arrived 10 minutes early, partly out of her ingrained punctuality, partly, though she would never admit it, out of curiosity. Yesterday, Adrienne Cole's voice over the phone had left her with a strange feeling, cold yet magnetic, like stumbling upon a tightly sealed dark room, only to notice a thin beam of light through the crack of the door. Maya wore a pale blue linen dress under a light cardigan, her hair tied neatly back, no flashy jewelry, only a pair of silver teardrop earrings. On her wrist, she'd sprayed a touch of jasmine and honey. The soft fragrance wrapped around her like a warm aura. The revolving door spun open. Adrienne walked in, tall, straight posture, a perfectly tailored gray suit, a subtly striped tie, his steps steady and assured. Theo's presence radiated effortlessly. A few people in the lobby recognized him, but none dared approach. Adrienne Cole carried with him a chill that kept people at arm's length. Except Maya, she recognized him instantly, not from the photos she'd glanced at online the night before, but from the way he moved, focused, silent, as if the world outside his path was blurred away. Then he stopped. His eyes fell on the navy suitcase at her feet. For a fleeting second, Maya thought she saw something softened in his gaze, but it vanished as quickly as a green light turning red. Adrienne walked over. Maya Collins, his deep voice both confirmed and questioned. That's me, she smiled, nudging the suitcase forward. And this must be the rightful parent of this little one. He looked at the suitcase, silent for a few seconds, long enough for Maya to arch a teasing brow. You're looking at it like it's your first love. Adrienne's cool, gray eyes lifted from the suitcase and fixed squarely on her. In that instant, she felt the full weight of his focus. Direct, steady, no detours. No, he said evenly, though his gaze betrayed nothing. I'm looking at its owner. Maya faltered for half a beat, then laughed aloud. Mr. Cole, that's a dangerous line. If I repeated it, people might think you're flirting. Adrienne said nothing, but the corner of his mouth twitched as if aware she had just bent the moment into a joke. The faint trace of jasmine and honey surrounding her stirred a memory. Distracting him from the crowded lobby, he reached out to take the suitcase from her. Their fingers brushed, an accidental touch, yet strangely lingering. Maya caught it sly as ever, tilting her head. Let's see, suitcase intact. Watch still here, not a single suit thread missing. I kept it safer than a bank vault. Now your turn. Give me back my baby. Adrienne gestured for Edward, his assistant standing a few paces away to set down the other suitcase. Maya bent to check, unzipping it quickly while sneaking a glance at Adrienne. Yep, this is mine. She pulled out her sketchbook, waving it in the air. If this went missing, half my professional secrets would have been exposed. Adrienne's eyes lingered on the sketchbook. He remembered every line inside, those notes, both witty and sincere. The image of it contrasted so starkly with his world of contracts and charts. He opened his mouth to say something, but Maya beat him to it. You peeked, didn't you? Let me guess, you probably laughed when you saw the note about the kitchen shouldn't look like an operating room. If I were you, I would have found it funny too. Adrienne was caught off guard. Instead of anger or offense at her belongings being seen, she handled it with playful confidence, unfazed, and he realized after many years that he actually laughed. Not loudly, just a quiet sound, but enough for Maya to pause mid-motion and look at him closely. Well, the icy CEO finally cracks a little, she grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. All right, then, we'll call it even. Adrian tightened his grip on his suitcase, keeping his calm exterior, but inside, he couldn't deny it. What struck him wasn't just the scent hovering around Maya, but the way she carried it, confident, witty, so alive that even the bustling hotel lobby seemed to fade around her. 3 days after the hostage exchange at the hotel lobby, Maya had almost filed the suitcase mishap away into the drawer of odd but funny life stories. She was back to being swallowed by work, sketching a penthouse living room, racing deadlines for a picky client, and bickering loudly with Zoe, her best friend and colleague, about whether the sofa should be beige or olive. Olive, it's warmer, Maya said firmly, drawing a confident line across the sketch. Zoe squinted. Or maybe because that CEO the other day was wearing a grayish olive suit. Hey, Ma laughed, tapping the ruler on the table. Don't you dare connect random dots. This is a strategic beige, completely unrelated to anyone, Zoe giggled, clearly unconvinced. That afternoon, Maya's phone rang. Unknown number. She picked up while stuffing rolled sketches into a tube. Hello, Miss Collins. The deep familiar voice, this time not buffered through an assistant. Maya froze for half a beat. Oh, the cold CEO. Don't tell me your suitcase has wandered off again. I swear I'm not doing rescue missions this time. Not a suitcase. Adrienne replied short and crisp. A project. Maya stopped walking. Curiosity piqued. A project. I'm building a new office for the creative division. I want it different, more comfortable, more vibrant. I think you could design it. Maya burst out laughing. Wait, you mean me? A small-time interior architect whose studio doesn't even have a neon sign yet, being asked by the CEO of Hale & Company to design a multi-million-dollar corporate office. Yes, Adrienne said in the same tone one might use to announce today's weather mildly sunny. She narrowed her eyes, teasing, do you like my designs or my perfume? A short silence on the other end. Then Adrienne answered without hesitation. Both. Maya nearly choked on her laugh, almost dropping the sketch tube. Oh my god, a CEO saying that, dangerously quotable. If I posted it online, you'd be meme material by tomorrow. Adrian didn't deny it, but his voice lowered, deeper, more sincere. You have a style I've never seen before. Director, practical, and you know how to make things warm. I want that feeling in the office. Maya stood still in the hallway, people weaving around her like she was a lamppost. In her head, two voices bickered. One shouted, big project, golden opportunity. The other whispered, careful, rich, handsome, cold, high drama risk. She chose to joke first. Fine, Maya said, shrugging, though he couldn't see. I'll agree to meet and hear the details. But fair warning, my consultation fee is $1 Americano, no sugar. This time, Adrian chuckled, short, but enough for Maya to realize he was melting just a little. Noted, he said, tomorrow, 10 o'clock at Hale & Company headquarters. All right, cold CEO. Maya smiled as she hung up, her heartbeat just one pace faster than normal. That evening, Zoe screamed like a fan who had just won concert tickets. Do you even realize what you were just invited to? This is a mega contract. Maya, if you nail this, your career is going to skyrocket in an express elevator. Maya flopped onto the sofa, waving her hand lazily. Yeah, it's great. But I still can't tell if he's more interested in my drawings or my note that says, kitchen lights too white make dinner feel like surgery. Zoe planted her hands on her hips. Who cares? Just crush the project first. The perfume talk can come later. Maya hugged a pillow and laughed, but deep inside something warm sprouted. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her designs, inhaled the scent on her wrist, and said, both. The 28th floor boardroom of Hale & Company was infamous as the Ice Reserve, a place where any idea daring enough to flicker risked being frozen solid under Adrienne Cole's stern gaze. The long glossy table gleamed, the lead screen glared, and around it sat rows of directors and managers in immaculate suits. Everyone braced themselves for the latest presentation on the creative workspace for the new office project. Only one person entered carrying a floral tote bag, a giant sketchbook in her arms, eyes sparkling mischievously as if she were about to do stand-up comedy. Maya Collins. Edward, the ever-dutiful assistant, looked like he'd gladly trade her in for a proper business suit on the spot. But Mia simply pulled out a chair, set her sketchbook on the table, and sat down as calmly as if this glass-walled boardroom were her favorite coffee shop. Good afternoon, everyone, she smiled. I'm Maya, the one responsible for making sure your new office doesn't look like a tax center. A few eyebrows rose. Adrian sat at the head of the table, silent, hands resting on a file, his gray eyes as steady as ever. Maya flipped open her sketchbook and turned it toward the group. Here's the preliminary concept. I call it the office with enough chairs. Why? Because right now, this room doesn't have enough places to sit. Not because it's minimalist design, she paused, eyes glinting, but because it's minimalist budget. The room froze for 1 second, then burst into laughter. Even the CFO, the kind of man who only ever laughed at balance sheets, let out a chuckle. Adrian lifted his head, his gaze landed on Maya, sitting there pen in hand, perfectly nonchalant after throwing a joke straight into the heart of the boardroom. And then the impossible happened. The corner of his mouth tugged upward. A smile, small, fleeting as a breeze, but enough to make Edward nearly drop his pen mid-notes. Maya pressed on. You say you want a creative space, but you can't just slap an orange wall in here and call it done. People don't come up with brilliant ideas just because they're sitting next to orange. They need a place serious enough to sign contracts, but relaxed enough to think up something crazy. And seating, lots of it so people can laugh together, argue together. She turned the page, revealing sketches of long benches mixed with low tables. A reading nook with greenery, whimsical details, teardrop pendant lights, a giant whiteboard plastered with sticky notes. I want meetings to feel less like a courtroom hearing and more like an oversized living room. A place where people feel most free to speak. One director frowned. Won't that be too comfortable? It could affect discipline. Maya arched a brow. Discipline isn't in the sofa, it's in the people. If someone wants to nap, they'll do it on a hard chair too. But if they want to create, at least let them do it in a seat that doesn't paralyze their back. Laughter again. A few heads nodded in agreement. Adrian remained silent, but his eyes never left Maya. She spoke quickly, sharply, her words both witty and sensible. No glossy charts, no jargon, just simple ideas hitting the heart of what people actually needed. And Adrian realized for the first time the boardroom wasn't tense. It was warm. When Maya finally closed her sketchbook, she ended with one line. Workspaces aren't museums. They need breath and laughter. If this new office makes people want to stay 10 minutes after hours just to talk, then I'll have succeeded. A brief silence, then applause, scattered at first, then steady. Adrian leaned back, his eyes softening. Inside him stirred something strange. In a world of reports and numbers, this woman had walked in, brought laughter, and turned the air into something he hadn't realized he was missing. He looked at Maya, simple, confident, faintly wrapped in jasmine and honey, and for the first time admitted to himself he was intrigued. The afternoon sky was clear, sunlight cutting into warm golden streaks across the steel frames of the half-finished Hale and Company office tower. The construction site buzzed with drills whirring, hammers clanking, and workers shouting over the den. Amid the concrete dust and scaffolding, one image stood out almost comically. Maya Collins in her pale blue linen dress with an oversized denim shirt thrown on top, holding an ice-cold beer she just bought from the kiosk across the street. Here, this is how you do a proper site survey, she declared, popping the cap with a hiss that rang louder than the drills. A few steps away stood Adrian Cole, crisp white shirt immaculate, holding a black coffee he'd picked up on the way, his brow furrowed. You do realize this is a construction site, not a bar? Maya wiped the foam from her lip, her eyes glinting playfully. That's exactly why. I call it blending in. The workers already look at me like I'm some exotic species. Might as well give them something to laugh at. Sure enough, a couple of passing workers chuckled, shaking their heads at the tiny architect drinking beer in the middle of the dusty site. Adrian shook his head too, but his gaze betrayed a faint softness. He was used to rules, black coffee, press suits, meetings scheduled to the minute. Maya was nothing like that. She turned a gritty worksite into a stage for lightness. They stepped into the unfinished lobby. Maya walked as she spoke, sketching invisible lines in the air. Here I want light pouring in like a waterfall. People should feel warmth the second they walk in, not that dreadful. Oh great, another day of deadlines. And over there she pointed to a bare corner. I'll put a round sofa conversation style. No more boardroom vibes. More like living room chatter. Adrian watched quietly, sipping his coffee. Every word drew eyes toward her. No data charts, no corporate jargon, just vivid, funny, surprisingly practical images. You know, Maya said suddenly, tilting her head up at the concrete ceiling, her voice serious for once. An office isn't just for working. It has to make people want to belong. People can work anywhere. Coffee shops, their couch, even their bed. They come to an office to feel part of something. I want this place to give them that. Adrian faltered. The word belong echoed in his mind. Something he had never once considered while building cold functional spaces. Maya turned, catching him watching her, and raised a brow. What? Did I ramble too much? He shook his head, his voice low. Honest, no, I was just thinking. I've never heard anyone talk about an office that way, she grinned, biting the rim of her beer bottle, the mischief back in her tone. Careful. If you listen to me too much, cold CEO might just turn into fun CEO. Adrian chuckled, his second laugh that weak, short, genuine, startling enough that nearby workers glanced over, surprised to see their usually stern boss smiling. They walked down a long corridor framed only by steel beams. Without hesitation, Mia popped down on a block of concrete, flipping open her sketchbook to draw on the spot. Adrian stood beside her, his shadow shielding her from the sun. He watched her hair dance in the breeze, her laughter ripple through the noise, and realized something quietly unsettling. It wasn't just the scent of jasmine and honey he remembered from the hotel. He was beginning to remember Maya's laughter, too, tidy, vibrant, filling the silent spaces he had long grown used to in his life. Night had fallen. Outside the city blazed with neon lights, but inside Maya's small studio, the only glow came from her computer screen and the warm yellow of a desk lamp. Sketches scattered everywhere alongside cold coffee cups and crumpled sandwich wrappers. Maya had tied her hair up high, eyes fixed on the 3D model on her screen. Every ceiling detail, light source, and chair rendered into life. A soft knock tapped against the glass door. She looked up, startled. Adrian stood there, still in his crisp white shirt, tie loosened, his face carrying the fatigue of a long day of meetings. But his eyes were strangely bright. What are you doing here this late? Maya frowned, hand still on the mouse. Edward said you were still working. I wanted to see. His tone was steady but lighter than usual. Mia shrugged, swerving the screen toward him. Well then, cold CEO. Welcome to my mini-movie theater. Adrian stepped closer, standing behind her. The scent of jasmine and honey drifted faintly from her wrist. Mingling with the smell of paper and stale coffee, he hesitated for a breath, then forced his focus onto the screen. On the monitor, the new office took shape. A lounge with curved sofas, light cascading from the ceiling like waterfalls. A reading nook with greenery, thoughtful little touches, a coffee tray. Personal storage shelves, a giant whiteboard. Adrian leaned in, his deep voice slipping out almost unconsciously. I didn't think it could look like this. Like what? A sofa big enough for you to nap on? Maya spun her chair, half joking. He shook his head, eyes still fixed on the model. Not just beautiful, it feels alive, real. I can see people in it. Not just a design. The unexpected praise caught Maya off guard. She tapped her pen against the desk, trying to cover her blush with humor. Wow, the CEO actually used the word alive. Tomorrow we'll have snow in June. Adrian chuckled softly, barely audible but real. He leaned closer, studying the 3D lobby with her. The distance between them shrank just a foot or two. Maya could feel his breath brush her shoulder. Adrian suddenly realized his heart was beating faster. Just like that night he first opened the perfume jar, the room grew unnaturally quiet. No traffic outside, no keyboard tapping, just jasmine and honey in the air. Quickened heartbeats, and a space between them that seemed to dissolve. Maya cleared her throat, spinning the model to another view, breaking the silence. What about this area? I'm thinking of a self-serve coffee corner. Gives employees more freedom. Adrian looked at the screen, but his voice came softer, almost wavering. I think it's wonderful, the design and the person who made it. Maya froze for half a second, then laughed to shake it off. Don't say things people could misunderstand, Mr. Cole. He didn't reply, but his eyes stayed on her, gentle, as if he himself was starting to misunderstand his own feelings. That night, Adrian left with a certainty. It wasn't just the perfume he remembered anymore. He was beginning to remember the sound of keystrokes, the teasing remarks, and the smile that lit up her little studio like no lamp could. Still following the story. If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. That morning, the shrill buzz of news alerts dragged Maya out of her late sleep. She groggy sprawled through her phone and nearly dropped the coffee mug in her hand. Right on the homepage of a major news site, Cold CEO Adrian Cole's secret lover revealed. Maya's jaw dropped. Beneath the headline was a photo from last week's construction site. Her perched playfully on a block of concrete, beer bottle raised high, laughing wide, while Adrian in his white shirt stood nearby, his gaze caught in a frame that made it look almost tender. Maya sputtered coffee all over her desk. Oh my god, since winter beer and shirts a scandal. She scrawled further. The comments burned her face. Classic, an unknown designer sleeping her way to the top. That the only thing she's good at is making men open their wallets. The cold CEO finally fell into a honey trap. Maya bit her lip, torn between fury and disbelief, but the humor drained away as one thought sank in. Her hard-earned reputation now at risk of being reduced to the ego's shadow. Walking into Hale and Company later that morning, Maya felt the weight of curious stares. Employees whispered as she passed, some smirking knowingly. Oh look, the secret lover. She imagined them saying in the elevator. She told herself, stay calm. You're here for work. Let them think what they want. But her chest still felt ready to burst. On the 28th floor, the boardroom was as frosty as ever. Adrian sat at the head, perfectly composed with his files. He nodded briefly when Mia entered, his gaze lingering a second longer than usual, then turned cold again. The meeting ran its course, covering progress updates, budgets, and presentations. Maya forced herself to stay focused, her voice steady as she delivered design updates, even as those scandalous headlines screamed at the back of her mind. When it ended, the managers filed out, leaving only Adrian and Mia in the room. The door shut and Ma spun around, arms crossed, eyes blazing. See that? The press just turned me into something ridiculous. Adrian rose slowly, voice level. I'll take care of it. Maya glared. Take care of it? What? Hire your legal team to bury the story. Pay another outlet to run a nicer one. You think that fixes it? That's the fastest way to kill a scandal. He spoke as calmly as if it were another item in a financial report. Maya laughed bitterly, the sound sharpened the empty room. You don't get it. This isn't just gossip. It's my name, my work, everything I built. I didn't come here to be branded as the Coldio's secret girlfriend. Adrien froze. He was accustomed to resolving problems with authority, but Maya clearly didn't want to be protected. She stepped closer, her voice firm. Listen to me, Adrien. I was invited to this project because of my designs. I work for my ideas, not because I know you, and definitely not because of some perfume or smile. I don't need favors. I don't need your reputation to validate me. Her eyes blazed, conviction so fierce it actually caught him off guard. She drew in a deep breath, finishing, so from now on, we need clear boundaries. You're the CEO. I'm the designer. Business is business. I won't let stupid rumors taint this project. And I won't let anyone think I'm writing on your name. Silence hung heavy in the room. Adrien stood opposite her, his hand tightening around the pen he held. He wanted to say, no, you're different. I brought you in not because of who you're seen with, but because of who you are. But the words stuck in his throat. At last, he only said, I understand. His voice was low, steady, unreadable. Maya nodded briskly, stuffing her sketchbook into her bag. Before leaving, she glanced back with a weary but proud smile. I don't need you to handle this for me, Adrien. I can stand on my own. The boardroom door shut behind her. Adrien stood still. The air still carried the trace of jasmine and honey, but this time it mixed with a sharp aftertaste of defiance. And he realized Maya didn't need him to protect her, but that only made him want to keep her close even more. In the days following their fiery exchange in the boardroom, Maya all but vanished from Adrien's sight. She came to the construction site only at fixed hours, handed documents to Edward, or sent designs by email. Direct encounters with Adrien were rare, and when they did accidentally cross paths in the elevator or hallway, she only offered a polite smile, a nod, and walked on. The distance was unmistakable. For a man who had always claimed to prefer silence, Adrien found this quiet strangely unsettling. On the third consecutive evening, he sat in his vast apartment, the cup of coffee on his table long gone cold. In the past, he had taken pride in his control, a schedule packed to the brim, routines never broken, emotions neatly excluded, but now, the absence Maya left behind seemed to seep into the smallest details of his life. He opened his refrigerator. Everything inside was perfectly aligned. Mineral water, canned coffee, perfect meals, precise, colorless. He remembered the time Maya had peeked into it, wrinkled her nose, and teased, is this a fridge or a supermarket display? You know this dinner has no soul, right? She had slapped a sticky note on the door afterward. Add fruit or you'll run out of vitamins. He hadn't removed it. Now staring at the faded ink, his chest felt heavier. The next morning, stepping into the Hale and Company lobby, Adrien caught sight of a vase of wild flowers on the reception desk. Soft greens, a few small bursts of yellow, not the sleek, curated arrangements his company usually displayed. He froze. That was Maya's style. Real flowers, not industrially arranged ones. He even recalled her once teasing him. If you keep fake flowers in the office, I'll put up a sign that says, this is not an office, this is a wax museum. For the briefest moment, he laughed and realized he didn't just miss the scent of jasmine and honey or her playful perch on a block of concrete. He missed how she made him laugh, even for seconds. How she shattered the armor of seriousness that had wrapped around him for years. That night, Adrien drove aimlessly through the city only to find himself parked in front of the construction site. It was dark, lit only by a few dim yellow bulbs. He stepped out, looking up at the unfinished steel frame etched against the night sky. He imagined Maya there, beer bottle in hand, grinning wide. This room doesn't lack minimalism. It lacks budget, he exhaled. For years, he had valued efficiency, numbers, and deadlines above all else. But Maya, she could turn a suffocating boardroom into a place full of laughter with just one line. What he once thought was mere attraction, the scent, the sparkle in her eyes. Her playful defiance was no longer simple. It had become a habit that crept into his every thought. A presence he could not deny. Resting a hand on the car door, he whispered to himself, it's not just the fragrance, not just the difference. It's her, it's Maya. And in that moment, for the first time in his life, Adrien Cole, the cold-controlled CEO, admitted one thing: he was truly in love. On the day of the new office inauguration, the Hale and Company building shone as if dressed in new skin. Balloons, banners, and a stretch of dazzling lights lined the lobby all the way to the top floors. But what drew gasps from the guests wasn't the spectacle. It was the office itself. Every brick, every chair, every patch of greenery radiated warmth and freshness. Maya stood off to the side, clutching her familiar sketchbook, her heart racing. She tried to look natural, but with reporters, cameras, and dozens of industry heavyweights present, her nerves prickled. A group of journalists whispered nearby, they say she's the EO's secret lover. But looking at this project, it's hard to deny she's talented. Maya bit her lip, forcing herself to focus on the man's words. Then Adrien appeared, tall, composed in a gray tailored suit, dark tie, and calm strides. He was used to press conferences and ribbon meetings. But today Maya noticed something different. After the ribbon was cut, Adrian stepped onto the podium. His voice was low and steady. Thank you for joining us today to celebrate the launch of Hale & Company's new office. I won't speak much about numbers, market share, or strategy today. I want to speak about someone. The hall rippled with murmurs. Cameras flashed furiously. Maya froze, her heart pounding in her throat. Adrian drew in a breath, his eyes sweeping the audience until they rested squarely on her. This space you see today, full of life, full of connection, wasn't created by me or by any reports. It was the work of Maya Collins, a designer I am deeply proud to have worked with. Maya flushed red. Reporters exchanged glances, pens already poised for headlines, but Adrian didn't stop. He lowered the microphone, stepped down from the podium, and walked straight toward her. Amid the stunned stares, he stopped before her, raised the mic once more, his voice deep but resonant. She didn't just design this office, she redesigned my life. The hall fell silent. I once thought I was only intrigued by a scent that lingered from a suitcase switched at the airport. But the truth is, what held me wasn't perfume. It was her laughter, her honesty, her talent, and her heart. Maya, I love you. Maya froze, breath caught. The hall erupted, whispers gasped, the furious clatter of cameras. But in that moment, all she could hear was the wild drum of her own heartbeat. She drew in a breath, lifted her chin, eyes shimmering. Do you realize you've just made me the centerpiece of every rumor? Adrian Cole. The hall chuckled softly. Adrian's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. Maya shook her head, then spoke softly, just enough for the microphone to catch. But if you're brave enough to say that in front of everyone, then I can be brave too. I'll give you and us a chance. Thunderous applause erupted, crashing through the hall. Adrian leaned closer, whispering, "Thank you," Maya answered with a radiant smile. The kind of light he knew from this moment forward would be the brightest thing in his life. After the grand inauguration of Hale & Company's new office and Adrian's shocking public confession, the press had a field day with headlines. But instead of hiding, Maya and Adrian officially started dating. Initially, many assumed it was just a publicity stunt. Yet, as photos emerged of the once cold CEO gradually melting before a witty, playful designer, both the media and the public began to root for them. One morning, Adrian woke up to discover that his wardrobe was no longer the untouchable territory it had once been. The left half still displayed his perfectly aligned white shirts, gray suits, and monochrome ties, but the right half had exploded with floral dresses, graphic tees, colorful scarves, and even a pair of neon blue sneakers. He stood there for a long moment before speaking in his usual dry tone. So this is what you'd call legal invasion? From the bathroom, Ma's voice floated out. Nope, it's called optimizing living space. You should thank me. I just rescued your closet from eternal boredom. Adrian shook his head, though the faint curve of his lips betrayed amusement. On a lazy weekend afternoon, Maya dragged Adrian to a no-frills beer joint near the old quarter. He sat stiffly, tie loosened, staring at the frosty bottle in front of him like it was an exam he hadn't studied for. Come on, try it. Don't frown like that, Maya said, linking her glass against his. Adrian took a cautious sip. The bitter taste spread across his tongue, his brows knitting, while Maya asked, eyes sparkling. Bitter, bitter but cute like me. She burst out laughing. Adrian looked at her, the ice in his eyes replaced with helpless fondness. He took another sip, this time without a frown. All right, he murmured with a small nod. If you call this cute, I'll agree. Another night, they went grocery shopping together. Maya filled the cart with chips, gummy bears, and cookies. Adrian glanced at the pile, then at her. Planning to feed a kindergarten? No, Maya replied matter-of-factly. I'm training you from cold CEO to normal human. He sighed, letting her toss in a tub of strawberry ice cream. But back home, it was Adrian who ended up sneaking through half of it while Maya dried her hair. When she caught him, hands on hips, she cried, "Aha, and who is it that called this kid food?" Adrian looked at the spoon in his hand, unfazed. Integration strategy, he said evenly. As time went by, between deadlines and everyday moments, the two found their rhythm. Maya thrived creatively, turning projects into vibrant, human-centered spaces. Adrian, the man once rigid and controlling, learned to soften, to listen, and in his vast apartment, once cloaked in gray silence, bursts of laughter now echoed. Maya teasing, Adrian responding dryly, but always with that hidden smile tugging at the corner of his lips. In the end, happiness was simpler than they had thought. One person brave enough to turn every rule upside down, and another willing to be swept along, until together they discovered their perfect harmony. A year slipped quietly by, quiet in the sense of back-to-back schedules pressed to the edge. But in the gaps between meetings and deadlines, there was still hot coffee, evenings walking along the river, and bursts of laughter over silly things. Maya's Collins studio now ran smoothly. 3 housing projects, 2 small offices, 1 cafe. Customers return not for pretty pictures, but because it feels easy to breathe here. Her name began to appear in industry articles, no longer accompanied by a question mark. Adrian was still Adrian, punctual, cautious, straight as a pencil line. But if you paid attention, you could see he had softened. He had learned to ask questions before making decisions, to smile even when a plan went off by half a day, to say well done with his eyes when Maya presented a new drawing. He didn't push her to take on projects for prestige. He simply introduced her to the right people and quietly faded out of the frame. Silent companioning, Zoe called it the new skill of the once cold CEO. One early summer morning, while Maya was adjusting a mood board for a kitchen, his message popped up. Free this afternoon, come see an experimental project. Bring the jasmine and honey jar. Maya pressed her lips into a smile. Even boyfriends send briefs now. But she still slipped the little glass jar into her bag out of habit. The car pulled away from the city center past tall shady trees. Light at 2700, Maya always liked to call it that, spilled across the road. Adrian drove with his left hand on the wheel, his right hand tapping a quiet rhythm to the instrumental track. He was silent in the way of someone hiding something important while pretending to be calm. That only doubled Maya's curiosity. What kind of project? She twisted the perfume cap. Think of it as a place to see how real a drawing can become. His voice was low, holding the secret until the last moment. The wooden gate opened to reveal a 1.5-story villa nestled among trees. Oak siding warms against the sunlight, tall windows, a deep porch, and a stone path leading to the main door. On a small wooden sign hung at the porch, hand-carved letters read, Jasmine and Honey. Maya froze, her hand unconsciously gripping her bag strap. You named the house after my perfume, after the thing that led me to your sketch. Adrienne replied, lips curving slightly, and after the thing from which everything began to soften. She stepped onto the porch, the door open, and Maya understood why he had stayed silent. Inside was her sketchbook turned into atmosphere, a living room with high ceilings and exposed beams, sunlight pouring from clear story windows like a waterfall, just as she had scribbled in the margin. A sofa curving around a round wooden table opposite an olive armchair for no one to sit in. Sitting exactly in the corner she had labeled exists just for fun. By the window, a wide seat big enough for one to lie down and another to rest their feet. That tiny note etched delicately onto the wood's edge like a secret. She touched the table's surface, coated in matte oil, warm and smooth. Fresh wood mingled with the jasmine scent from the jar she carried as if someone had just flipped the home switch. The kitchen's to the right. Adrian tilted his chin. Maya turned and burst out laughing. A matte stone island, sand-colored cabinets, brushed brass handles. On the shelf edge, a small brass plate engraved with her own words. Kitchen lights shouldn't feel like an operating room. You even engraved that joke because it makes the kitchen a kitchen, he said simply, and here he opened a cabinet door. Inside a yellow sticky note read, add fruit or you'll lose all the vitamins. In her own familiar handwriting. Maya choked on laughter, a very devoted copycat. They walked down the hall. A cozy reading nook tucked by a window to the backyard. Tall shelves, oversized pillows for crying properly on bad days, a fabric-shaded floor lamp casting the soft glow she loved. A small study with a pin board, a wide wooden desk, and a window looking out to a pergola. Everywhere she paused, she found one of her old notes turned into matter. Is this an RD project of your company? She whispered, afraid to break the fragility. No, Adrian shook his head. It's my house, or ours if you want. I spent a year following every stage of the construction process. Every detail she whipped around. You supervised it yourself? Not by myself. By a good team, he corrected, but I learned to let them lead. You were right. A good house doesn't need a loud commander. It needs someone to guard the warmth. Maya fell silent. The window frame blurred. In 1 year, amidst all the chaos, he had turned her cheeky sketches into a house with doors you could open, wood you could touch, air you could breathe, and he had named it after the scent that had brought them together. Jasmine and Honey is overly sweet for a house name, she tried to joke, her voice trembling. But I like sweets. I know. Adrian smiled faintly. They stopped before the last wooden door at the end of the hall. One more place, he said, opening it. The master bedroom is spacious, featuring a window seat covered in white cushions and sheer curtains swaying in the breeze. Beside the window sat a low chest-like cabinet. On top rested a small deep blue velvet box. Maya swallowed hard. The air slowed by half a beat. Adrian didn't rush. He stepped to her side, turned her toward the light so sunlight fell across her cheek, making the tiny freckle glimmer, the one only he noticed. He didn't need background music. The rustle of leaves outside was enough. You once said, Maya whispered, the next life begins at a window seat big enough to lie down on. And by changing the Wi-Fi password, he added, to Jasmine and Honey. They both laughed. Then he picked up the box and opened it. A slender platinum ring lay on velvet, the stone shining modestly, not showy. Adrian looked up, his gaze steady and warm, his voice low, each word distinct. The first time you picked up the wrong suitcase, I found the scent of destiny. But what I truly want to keep is you. The words fell soft as evening light on wood. Maya raised her hand to her mouth, shoulders trembling. She laughed, the kind of laugh that had pulled him out of perfect walls. And tears came uninvited. Do you know, she stammered, half laughing, half crying, you've just forced me to say yes while still wanting to bargain. Banter first, nod later, nod first, then banter again. She drew a deep breath. Eyes shining. Yes, I do. Adrian bent slightly. He didn't kneel on, not from reluctance, but because his hand wanted to warm hers quickly. The ring slid onto her finger, fitting perfectly, as if measured by all the times their hands had interlaced on cold streets. When he looked up, he saw Maya's widest smile. Now for the post-marriage terms. She recovered, wiping her eyes. Closet space 58 to 42, 55 to 45. He shot back instinctively. You still live by principle and you still live by exceptions. They both laughed. 57 to 43, he conceded. And every light in the house stays too. 700 Kelvin. Deal. She slapped his palm lightly. They sat on the window seat exactly in the pose. One reading, one resting their feet. She had once dreamed. Outside. The pergola scattered golden light like honey. In the distance, jasmine buds promised a fragrance that drifted through every evening. Maya leaned on Adrian's shoulder, fingers twirling the ring. First time yet already familiar. Thank you, she whispered, for walking beside me this past year. Not pushing me to run faster, not pulling me back, just walking beside me. I learned from you, he replied, that the best design doesn't flaunt itself. It makes people feel at peace. They circled the house once more, arranging mint tea beside the Americano machine, sticking new notes, laughing at the olive chair that still looked smug. Back in the living room, Mia turned to him. This house. Does it already have an owner? It has since the foundation was laid, Adrian said, gripping her hand. I just waited for today to hang the belongs to sign. Maya laughed. Then give me a hammer. I'll hang it myself for true cozy chaos spirit. Fine, he nodded, but wear gloves. The sunlight softened and jasmine thinned in the air. Inside jasmine and honey, happiness wasn't loud. It spread like golden glaze on wood, like a warm note lingering on the tongue, between the bitterness of coffee and the sweetness of the gummy bears. Adrian was now addicted to. They stood by the door, looking once more at the hand-carved sign. Maya whispered, turns out destiny isn't a cliché. It has a scent. Jasmine and honey and a sound. Your laughter, he finished. Since the day the suitcase went astray, they had weathered misunderstandings and storms, learned to draw boundaries and tear them down at the right places, and learned to balance love and career without losing themselves. Now, in the house named for a fragrance, they had one final keyword: belonging. Maya turned, tiptoed, and kissed him quick on the lips. A kiss short, sure, clear as a signature on an approved drawing. From now on, she said, wherever the suitcase goes, remember to carry me with it. Adrian laughed. And you remember to bring the laughter, and this house in our minds. She blinked playfully, so even lost, we'll find our way home. Outside the breeze stirred, inside the ring cast a tiny glint across the table. A happy ending, not for fireworks, but for something lighter than breath. Two grown people choosing each other and knowing how to keep each other. Sweet, funny, enduring, just like the name carved above the door. Jasmine and